It's been a week since the kind of out of the blue firing of Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the Vikings general manager. I say out of the blue because of the timing of it all. Like no one when we saw that he got fired, no one was really surprised at the fact that he got fired. It was more so sticker shock of the timing of it. Like why wait till now? If you would have did this when the season ended, maybe a week after the season ended, nobody would have batted an eye. It's just the timing is weird. It makes it feel like a reactionary firing. And like I said, no one is batting the eye at the fact that he got fired because you could have just did it off of drafts, misses and free agency stuff like that. Normal GM stuff, things that GMs do get fired for. But like me personally, I feel like the firing was a knee jerk reaction to Sam Darnold being in the Super Bowl. Let's just call it what it is. Nothing from the end of the season up to now has changed besides that one variable. So for me to sit here and not believe that that's the main reason why it was initiated, I don't know, it just kind of doesn't make sense to me. Everyone has their own speculation of why the move was made at this particular time. Some people say it was a power struggle between him and Kevin O'Connell, and the Wilfs ultimately just went with Kevin O'Connell, the guy that coaches the football team and has won, a good amount of games. Me personally, I feel like it's just a knee jerk reaction to Sam Darnold, a guy that was in your building last year, that took you to 14 wins last year, had a great season for you last year, and is now in the Super Bowl with another team this year. So with those optics look bad. And if they could just come out, if they would just come out and say that, it is what it is. It's a mess up. But let's not sit here and act like Kwesi made that decision on his own. I believe Kevin O'Connell did want Sam Darnold back, as he did with Kirk Cousins, but I don't really think he went up to Kwesi and said, "Give me this guy back. That's my quarterback." I think he was like, "I would love to have Sam back. I don't know if JJ's ready, but I don't know. No one really knows what's going on." And for people to suggest that it's all on Kwesi, I don't know. I feel like that's disingenuous. Back to the rumors of like a power struggle and dysfunction between Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Duffy-Mensah. This is a report, well, not a report, but like this is a quote from Tom Pelissero. I will say this: there is a habit for certain people, if they get beat on the scoop, to immediately lend additional details to the story that may or may not be 100% grounded in fact. Pelissero said on K-Fan's Power Trip Morning Show. So you ended up with a bunch of tweets thrown out there into the universe that suggested things that, based upon all my knowledge of the situation, are not entirely accurate. The idea that this was a toxic environment, there was tension between Kwesi and Kevin are friends personally. They have always been good. There was not a fight. There was not a blow up. It was not, quite frankly, like it was at the end of the Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman era. Two guys that I like a lot, but they weren't talking. It was never like that. They had disagreements, continued Pelissero on O'Connell and Adolfo Mensa. They didn't see eye to eye on certain aspects of roster building. In the end, you have a quarterback situation that needs to be sorted out. You have a salary cap situation that needs to be sorted out. As the Wolves heard all the information, and they always do this every year, they have people come to New Jersey and they have a series of meetings. They asked a lot of pointed questions. They got some honest answers, and they came to the conclusion that this was just not the right partnership moving forward, not just between Kevin and Kwesi, but the entire organization. And I don't think you need to come up with some wild story about why it didn't work. To pin it on, he took paternity leave 3 years ago, even if you're bringing it up to say, but that wasn't it. You're introducing a topic that had not been a topic. That's my point. That's like, for that, the paternity leave thing, that was very unnecessary to even bring up. Like there was no reason to bring that up. Sure, is there a level of frustration that comes when you feel like you're having to do more because your coworker is out? You don't fire a guy 3 years after he took paternity leave. Like, what are we even talking about? It's just wild. Like we all knew that. Yeah, he wasn't around in the summer of 2023. He missed chunks of the spring and missed part of the training camp. But I never got any sense that it was some long-standing thing. It was well known that that happened and that there was some frustration from the people in the building about it, but it never changed the relationship. So this idea that it was a toxic environment, frankly, complete and utter nonsense. I agree with Pelissero about pretty much everything he said. The one thing I will push back a little bit on, uh, the partnership not working. Yeah, I can see why the Wolves would do that, but like I said, the timing of it, it just feels like some things that came up in that meeting had to do with Sam Darnold. Oh, not necessarily just Sam Darnold, but the quarterback position as a whole. Not saying it was the wrong thing to do. I think moving forward, firing Kwesi might be the best thing for the team going forward. This is from Kevin Seifert. This was written today or posted today. The Vikings reset their organization after firing Kwesi. The Vikings are creating new pathways for communication, establishing workflow, and setting the table for an offseason full of important and, in some cases, far-reaching ideas. In 3 months, they'll do it again when owners Ziggy and Mark Wilf hire Kwesi's replacement. Basically, what he's saying, like people assume that Kevin O'Connell is like the head decision maker, but it's important to not discount Brzezinski in that equation. Which I get what you're saying, and obviously he's more tapped in than I am. But it's from the outside looking in, it's really seeming like the coaches Kevin O'Connell and Flores with that has a little bit more say, a little bit more sway in the situation, and they pretty much get to pick who they want, basically. With Brzezinski kind of being the mouthpiece, the head, the head guy. Is Brzezinski a true candidate for the permanent job? That would depend on, in part, what Brzezinski wants. During his 27 years with the franchise, he has turned away interest from multiple teams that wanted to interview him for expanding roles. From what I hear about Brzezinski, I don't see him wanting to be the full-time GM. I think if he does want to be a full-time GM, it would be with the Vikings, obviously. But I just don't see him leaving his role that he's been in for 30 plus years to be in a role that, you're gonna be in, you're in a to be a GM, you're just waiting to be fired. That's just like being a coach. Every coach and every GM is waiting to be fired, except for a few lucky ones that get to retire on their own terms. So, would Brzezinski want to leave his capologist job permanently and be a GM? Who knows? It depends on what he wants. If I think if he does want the job will probably be his most likely, depending on how things go in this offseason. It's kind of like a test run. What does all of this mean for O'Connell? It it would be wrong to put O'Connell on the so-called hot seat. That's the Vikings are tied for the NFL's best regular season winning percentage since his arrival in 2022, and he's under contract for another 4 seasons. This notion that O'Connell is on the hot seat is utterly ridiculous. Yes, you would like for him to have a playoff win. Yes, you would like for him to be contending for a Super Bowl. Yes, I don't think getting rid of O'Connell and hiring another guy to start from scratch is the best move. I think O'Connell is a Super Bowl caliber coach. That's my opinion. Others have their own opinions. They don't think so. That's fine. Does this change the Vikings' plans for quarterback JJ McCarthy? If you would have asked me this a week ago, even like as soon as Kwesi got fired, if you'd have asked me this a week ago, I would have said no. I think the plan for JJ McCarthy would have stayed the same. But after a week of of just stuff coming out about how O'Connell didn't think JJ was ready, and kind of like just interviews I'm hearing, like just quotes from Jettas, from Aaron Jones at the Super Bowl weekend or NFL honors, wherever they were. It seemed a little dicey for JJ. I don't know how to put it. It's just not as solid as I thought it was. It seemed like the locker room is very, very open to exploring different quarterback options. Whether it be, big game hunting for Joe Burrow, whether it be signing a quarterback, trading for a quarterback. It seems like the roster is open and they're all missing Sam Darnold. That's what I gather from like the interviews that I've seen. So I don't see Kevin O'Connell. I don't see him giving up on JJ McCarthy unless you can get a Joe Burrow. But I don't know. It seems like if they wanted to move on, they could just blame it all on Kwesi and just wipe their hands. I don't think that's the best solution, but I think that is a route that they could go. I don't know. But with all that being said, bro, with all that being said, I don't one, I think the Kwesi firing was reactionary. It was an emotional decision based off of Sam Darnold's success elsewhere. Two, the notion that, people had a problem with Kwesi taking a paternity leave. That's part of the reason why he got fired. That's BS. I really don't have no time for no type of reporting like that. Uh, Thirdly, the power struggle between Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi. I think there is some truth to that. Not as much as people has been like, putting on, like it was just a toxic environment, and just it was tough to work there. I think they had, like Pelissero said, they had disagreements on how to build a roster, had disagreements on certain things, but I don't think that necessarily meant it was toxic. I just think when you open up to so much collaboration as a general manager and you don't really have a final say or a football voice, you open yourself up for some scrutiny when you can't really make decisions, or if your decisions don't align with real football people. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of where the button of heads went, and it's very possible to disagree and still have a good working relationship. Like, I don't understand why people think that's so hard. Also, I do think Kevin O'Connor and Brian Flores have much more power than they had a week ago. Much more say on who stays and who goes and who we bring in. Rob Brzezinski could easily work his way up into being the general manager if he wanted to, or he could just go slot back into the role that he was in, and in the role that he's comfortable in, that he's really really great at. That's all possibilities. And lastly, man, JJ, I don't know, I don't know JJ, bro. I believe in JJ. I believe JJ could be a good quarterback. Will the team have the patience? Will he take a leap? That year two, he's going into year three, but it's really year two because he hasn't played. Well, he didn't play a lot last year either, but he played a little bit. I don't know. He would have to make a tremendous leap. He would have to be locked in this offseason and really, really mature a lot for them to feel comfortable going with him. They could go so many ways with the quarterback position with Kwesi being gone, because you have an opening to kind of just move on or wipe your hands with the situation. So we'll see how it plays out. But one thing for sure, I know it's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Minnesota Vikings. There's a lot of things that we don't know. It could be surprises. It could either be the most exciting offseason, or it could be so boring. It can be just status quo. Go with what you go with and move on. We'll see. But with this team, don't nothing surprise me, bro. So that's all I got. I wanted to cover a few topics, not really go in depth, but just kind of cover all the bases. But if you're interested in more like Vikings news, Vikings talk, commentary, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the like button for me. And I'll see y'all next time. Let's go.